Okay, so my wife and I went to see Ready Player One last night. And the first thing I remember about the movie is I don't think there's anything more boring than nonstop action. I mean, the thing just so overwhelming from the beginning. It's like an opera singer that comes in and starts off right on the highest note she's got. It's got nowhere to go. And all of this stuff moving around, it's actually really kind of boring. The thing about the movie that's kind of interesting for me, because I've been playing video games since 1979 or something like that. I think if I'd been 2-3 years older, I would have missed the whole thing. But it's kind of, Ready Player One is Steven Spielberg's internet. It's what the internet would look like if Spielberg designed it. I know he didn't write it, but still. It's like, for example, the player names in Ready Player One are like Percival, who is the knight who went on the quest for the Holy Grail, but it's spelled with a Z, Percival, and Artemis, the goddess of the hunt, but it's Artemis with a 3 instead of the E. Is so edgy. You know, that's why I say it's Steven Spielberg's internet, because if the real internet, they're not named Percival and Artemis, they're named Fart Monkey 2349, you know, and that's only because Fart Monkey was already taken. But there's a couple little things. A lot of the movie is them walking around and just looking at how beautiful everything is in this cyber universe. You definitely know those are not video gamers, because in actual video games, nobody walks anywhere. Everybody runs full speed. If you got someplace you got to be, you're not going to just walk down this corridor that you've been through 1,000 times. Oh, look, it's so beautiful, it's so wonderful. So those are like little trifles. But the big thing is, the movie was so disappointing to me because it made the whole film about what was happening inside this game. It was an in-game adventure, in the you know, the Oasis adventure, and it was such an opportunity lost, because what was so interesting about the possibility of the game is that these people are living in these horrible trailer homes, stacked trailer homes, you know. And nobody's working, and everybody's poor, and all they want to do is get home so they can, you know, get on this game, this Oasis game, and get on the internet. It would have been much more interesting if the whole thing was about how many sacrifices people are making, because when you get right down to it, it's talking about addiction. It's the same thing as crack addiction. If you're living in this horrible place, it's easy to say, oh, we shouldn't be doing drugs, you know. But if you're living in a horrible place, either physically or psychologically or both, and there's a chance to escape, most people will take that chance to escape, even if it makes their real world worse. And he could have looked at so much stuff that would have been so interesting, you know, about whether or not this is worth it, and whether or not it's a serious addiction. The only part of the whole movie that I actually thought was kind of good along these themes was, it's not really much of a spoiler alert, there's a scene where one of the characters actually gets locked into the internet. They won't let her take the thing off. And that actually kind of scared me a little bit. So, you know, the whole thing is really just about that. There are moments where you see things you like. The Lost in Space robot was there, and you know, Buckaroo Banzai and Sulaco from Aliens and all that, but none of that's really the question. The question is to play or not to play. That is the question. And the real issue comes down to what they had an opportunity to cover and never did, and that's this. What happens when the world online gets to be more interesting and better in terms of experience than the real world? Do you have a moral obligation to not go? Do you have a moral... What is that dynamic? How does it work? And I have really mixed feelings about this. I've been playing computer games since the first Microsoft Flight Simulator in 1979 or 80 or something. And all my life I wanted to be an astronaut, and I wanted to go walk on other planets and fly over them. And I'm not going to get that chance in the real world. But I tried, and I'm a real world pilot. So these are all justifications for me, because, I mean, look at this. Just, honey, can you turn around and take a look at this? I mean, this is as close as I'm going to get to being able to do, you know, the kind of things that I wanted to do. And I don't know. I've been on this planet in this game, which is called Star Citizen, and I've seen sunrises over these icy worlds, and it's been breathtaking. So I guess it's like anything else, right? It's a question of, do you have the perspective on it, or is this going to own you? I just wish they would have had, you know, I wish they would have covered the sort of the philosophical dilemma. As it was just an over-the-top action movie, and as I said, nowhere to go. You know, the final thing I'll say about this is they did that with James Bond in the 70s and 80s. You know, they made James Bond, who got bigger and bigger, and finally got Moonraker and these orbiting, you know, space stations and stuff. And finally, when they picked up Daniel Craig, they rebooted the whole thing and they took it back down to what was interesting, which is a man in an alley with a gun. And that's all. And that made Bond so much more interesting because that's something you could connect to. And as I said, I've never seen such spectacular visuals in my life, and for most of the movie, I can't remember being that bored. Now, if you excuse me for a second here, there's some pirates that need some dealing with. It was their misfortune to stumble upon a lawful good character, you know, on a Saturday night. And by the way, I am going out right after this in the real world, so there you go.